Our last speaker of the morning, keeping with our theme of storytelling, is Maureen Linker. Maureen is a professor of philosophy in the Department of Literature, Philosophy, and the Arts at the University of Michigan-Dearborn. She has published in a variety of academic journals, including the Criminal Law Quarterly, Social Theory and Practice, and the International Journal of Argumentation. Her most recent book is Intellectual Empathy, Critical Thinking for Social Justice, published by the University of Michigan Press. In addition to writing and classroom teaching, Maureen has led workshops on diversity fatigue, navigating difficult dialogues, finding common ground through intellectual empathy, and managing cultural competency. I would say all these titles of these workshops are extremely topical, given our polarized society today. So without further ado, please welcome Maureen Linker.
Thanks so much, John, and thanks to the conference organizers for giving us the opportunity to be here. My name is Maureen Linker. I'm from the University of Michigan-Dearborn, and I wanted to talk to you today about one of those seed grants that Rick had mentioned early this morning and how it has transformed student experience on our campus. So the proposal that we had sent in for the seed grant was entitled More Than a Single Story, U of M Dearborn Speaks. And it was, the inspiration for our proposal came from my teaching Nigerian writer Chimamanda Adichie's The Danger of a Single Story, which if you have not seen her TED Talk, it's got, I think, over 33 million views. But it was something that really resonated with my students in philosophy classes that I taught, because of this notion of a single story that was being told about people who don't understand the richness of your own cultural experiences. And Adichie says that stories have power, and so following Dr. Adler, this is a really wonderful segue, and I'm a fan of your work and a fan of the work of other folks here. But that stories have power in that they have the ability not just to tell the story of another person, but to make it the definitive story of that person. And she says that they not only shape perceptions about who we are, but they influence the understanding of ourselves. And one of the things that I had noted in my own teaching was that when we read stories of great philosophers, when we read life-changing experiences of intellectuals throughout history, my students would say, that's great, but you know, my story's not that interesting. And coming from, you know, the world that many of us have inhabited for a long time, the world of high-achieving academia, coming from New York City to the Midwest, I was just shocked at this lack of confidence, this lack of empowerment that many of my students were feeling. But I was also really attracted to the University of Michigan-Dearborn campus. It's a predominantly commuter school. Most of our students stay within the region, and it was an experience that resonated for me too, having gone to City University of New York, Brooklyn College, having been a commuter myself. I wanted to stay and be in this environment with these kinds of students. But that was a recurring theme, is that my story's not that interesting. Of course, when you talk to students, their stories were remarkable, right? So a few facts and figures about our campus. We have just a little over 8,000 students. 94% of are Michigan residents, and yet they represent 49 counties and 78 birth countries. And we have a large first-generation population of students from really all over the world whose families have come here, but we have a particularly large Arab population, both Arab Muslim and Arab Christian. 49% of our students, as I said, are first gen, and 44 are Pell eligible. We do, though, live in the shadow of Ann Arbor. And we are not Ann Arbor. We are affiliated, we are part of the University of Michigan system, but we are not Ann Arbor. And we also live, so to the west, about 30 miles, we have Ann Arbor. And to the east, we have Detroit and Wayne State University, which is a wonderful urban university, Research One University. We are between the two. And when our university has gotten any attention at all, as it did once on an episode of The Simpsons, the attention was both comical in some extent to our students and also painful. So many of our students report being described by their friends or their peers as off-brand Michigan or the Walmart Wolverines, or worse, satirically characterized by xenophobic or racist labels because of the large Arab Muslim population in our region. And so in this episode, one of the Simpsons characters went there to hide out by wearing a full burqa. So our proposal, which we had submitted to CLTE, was that digital storytelling could counterbalance some of these prevailing stereotypes and enable our students to take agency over the portrayals of their identity, their communities, and foster a mental shift that aids in discovering their purpose. And we submitted the proposal just as we were entering into the pandemic. And so I just wanted to counter that previous Simpsons picture with an actual picture of our students. So the team that was formed to work on this was a new consortium that had been developed on our campus. So 3 existing units: the University Library, our Career Services Center, and our Global Education Program. And we organized these 3 units into something that we called Experience Plus. And the idea was that we wanted to provide, really to promote literacies of different kinds: information literacy, cultural literacy. Executive director of our Experience Plus program is here with me today, Lori Such. And so we were working on Experience Plus, and we thought when we had submitted the proposal that it would be a good first project for this consortial relationship now between these 3 units. We wanted the library to take the lead because it was a storytelling project. And Christopher Spilker, who's the head of our Library Research Center, when we got the good news that we got the grant, became a certified digital storyteller through Story Center in Berkeley, California. So phase 1 of our project was last year. We recruited 11 students, and a few things I wanted to say. The idea here was that we didn't want this to be part of a course. For credit, we wanted it to be something where students get a stipend or have it be a paid opportunity. So the overwhelming majority of our students work 25 to 30 hours a week in addition to their coursework. They're very practically minded, and we thought that if we frame this as a professional opportunity, then it would resonate in a different way for our students. We also wanted to recruit students who didn't maybe personally see themselves as great storytellers or great TikTokers or great, right? But students who might not, and in fact, describe themselves as not particularly creative. We had several engineering students who really worked with that master narrative and had some transformative experiences through it. But we recruited it like a job, and we wanted to set it up like a lab, like a workshop, a professional one. So we worked on a job description. We purchased a license for WeVideo. That's what we've been using. We began meeting weekly, and this was online because when we started, we were still in the midst of COVID. And the things we were working on were script writing, selecting photos and images, using sound and music. Most importantly, I think, giving and receiving feedback, exploring myths and stereotypes, and also the history of the region. And we also invited workshops from faculty with expertise in both the Detroit and Dearborn area, also intercultural competency, brand marketing, and storytelling. And just a couple of things, I think, about the approach that we were taking. One is that these are not videos. These were digital stories. So it was just an evolution of storytelling. Again, the students we recruited had an interest in this, but they also had an interest in a campus job. Two of the students who participated were international students who could only work on campus, and so they were graduate students in engineering, and both were from India, and they were just looking for a campus job. We had first students who were first time in college, right out of high school. We had transfer students, undergrad and grad students. But from the very start, even hearing their own voice was too much for many of the students. So we started with small projects. Just bring in a photo and tell us about the photo, a photo that you're in. And that was a big step for them to take. Then actually, let's script it. And when we finally got students to the point where they would show some of their own photographs, script a story, then it was like very scary to give feedback, because how do you give feedback to somebody who finally gave voice and is telling you just a little bit about their lives? So we had to work on that. How is feedback productive? How is it constructive? How do we build trust? Again, keeping in mind that this is a professional opportunity. And that reminder during the whole time kept them sort of moving, right, in the right direction. The other reason why we didn't want this part of a course was because we were leaning into negative stereotypes about our campus, which is not something that's easy to do in most courses. It also meant that we weren't doing marketing videos. And I knew that at the end we were going to showcase these videos, and though we had incredible support from our chancellor, who was really a fan of the idea of transformative education, we were all a little worried about what they were going to produce in the end, because the focus was stereotypes and myths about our campus and about our region. So phase one culminated in a website, and I won't link to it here, but I'll share these PowerPoints so people can look at it. That has all of our stories. We had a wonderful, I thought, graphic for our website. And then a showcase at the end of the academic year. We finally were able to move into in-person meetings as we moved into spring. And we invited campus leadership, so all the senior officers and deans, faculty who were interested in coming, the students and their families. And we really wanted their families to feel like they were VIPs. So I'm going to share with you one of the stories. They have to be between 3 and 5 minutes long. I could have picked any one of them from last year. I'm picking a story by a student named Kelly, who was a non-traditional student. She transferred in from Henry Ford Community College, which is a pipeline for our campus. And I just thought her story would be a good one to share here, but like I said, I could have shared any one of them. So my partners over there, I think, will hear us up.
I was first accepted to the University of Michigan-Dearborn during senior year of high school in late 2015. And although I'd applied and had gotten accepted, I couldn't shake the feeling that this just wasn't the next step for me. This was mainly because I didn't know what I wanted to study or do for a career yet, and because truthfully, U of M Dearborn didn't strike me as the place to get much college experience. Ultimately due to it being a commuter school, and because in comparison, Dearborn had been portrayed as the outcast, less popular sibling to the Ann Arbor campus. In high school, I heard quite a few negative remarks from my friends and peers about the size or the area. The school wasn't viewed from a lens of much excitement. And as an insecure teenager who cared way too much about the opinions of others, I listened to those around me and decided this wasn't where I should be. Trying to save some money while deciding on a major, I opted to start at Henry Ford College with expectations of transferring to a new city. But after witnessing the student loans my friends piled on, and still not being able to decide on what I wanted to do, I figured it would be wiser to save time and money by staying at HFC. Because I continued to struggle with finding a major, I rashly enrolled in their ophthalmic technician program and ironically spent the next 4 years commuting just down the street from U of M Dearborn. While Henry Ford was still a great college and has a great program, it didn't bring me happiness, and I knew early on that I wanted to study something else. And I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you do anything about it? I think that's probably why. After 4 years, I realized a change wouldn't occur unless I worked for it. And at the age where everyone was graduating, I switched paths pursuing occupational therapy. While I truly wanted to move away, I knew commuting helped me save money, and when I saw that U of M Dearborn had a curriculum in my area of interest, I reapplied without much thought and got reaccepted in April of 2020. While I was excited at first, the passage of time slowly reminded me of all of my former beliefs about the school being lesser than, and I once again felt the weight of those insecurities. To add fuel to the fire, I got accepted at the height of the pandemic, making any possibilities of being on campus and meeting new people obsolete. My mind cycled through thoughts on how I was now too old and on whether or not I was making the right choice, picking a seemingly bland option simply for the convenience. The negative beliefs I held towards my choice in the school grew worse each day, and when classes finally began, I could no longer bear the weight of it all. I couldn't withstand the curriculum classes, found myself not knowing what I wanted to study yet again, and was struggling in a way I'd never experienced before. It all added up, and I almost dropped out after my first semester. After confiding in a friend with everything I was feeling, they tried to convince me that I was exactly where I should be and encouraged me to seek help from a counselor. Through incredibly hard work at reframing my mindset, I slowly could feel the changes in myself. I realized it wasn't about being unsure of a major, being an older college student, or even attending what I believed to be a boring school. It was my own insecurities and self-doubts that prevented me from seeing all of the positives in front of me. Although people may see U of M Dearborn as less than, especially compared with Ann Arbor, my experience has shown me otherwise, and I'm glad it's taken me such a journey for me to realize this. I've had amazing professors and classes that have opened my eyes towards what I truly want to study, met some incredible peers, and have worked with plenty of students who are my age and older, and it's made me feel that much more welcome. With businesses being able to open up more in recent months, I've been able to explore the surrounding area and have fallen in love with where my school is. From counseling and my personal experiences the school has provided me, I've continued to grow acceptance with being a student here, and I'm so proud to be at a point where I'm no longer simply accepting. I am happy with where I'm at. Although I started off on a horrible foot, my experience with U of M Dearborn has been a blessing in disguise. It pushed me to help my mental health and has led me to many new experiences, one of which is this one right here, being in a position of working on and bringing my stories and creativity to life, something that I've always wanted to be able to do. While this isn't the path I thought I'd be on, it's mine, and I now know that I'm exactly where I should be.
Thanks. So that was Kelly's story. She's excited that you all got to see that. So we have this showcase, and this is Sydney, who shared her story about her friends' perceptions in Detroit about being at U of M Dearborn. Sydney just finished a major project for campus, doing an MLK video and everybody's impressions and understanding about MLK. And Sydney was first time in any college student. This is Ankita's story. Ankita was a graduate student. She used the experience of snow for the first time as kind of a metaphor for some of her experiences being in this region. And then we had the students sit up there sort of inside the actor's studio style and had them pass the mic. And though those of us who were working with the students were proud of them kind of every step of the way, this event was incredible to witness. They were such professionals. They had built such trust among each other. They had shared really authentic stories. Kelly did not want to talk about her mental health challenges initially, and understandably. But then she insisted that it be part of her story, and that story be shared. So this was a great event, and the students got to mingle. There's our chancellor, Domenico Grasso, and some of the other folks who came and their families. One parent came up to me of one of the students there, Colin, and said, you know, as a parent, I feel like this was my capstone thesis. So it was also so great to share it with the families for whom many of our students are living and spending time with and making sacrifices so their students could be there. Just a little assessment data. We did a pre and post survey. The two things that really stood out in terms of professional skills, the growth, was in editing software and organizing ideas in meaningful ways. But the students increased post-assessment all of the kind of professional variables that we were looking at. The post-survey comments that we got from students, again, with a focus on the professionalism of this, was, you know, a few highlights. I've learned how to prioritize and organize my time, sharpen my creative skills, put more of my own voice into my academic writing for other courses. And getting outside perspective and feedback is a very important strategy in creating a story. And that whole process, at the end of it, for the faculty and staff that were working with these students, what we said is we'd hire any one of them in a minute. The whole experience of that year and of giving and receiving feedback. So phase 2, we asked those students to now tell us how to keep designing this forward. One of the things they said was, we did this together for a year, and the first half of it was still in the height of the pandemic. We'd like to split it into 2 semesters, and we'd like to do mentoring work. And so we have a new cohort of students, and they said, let's move out of the myths and stereotypes about the campus, and let's move more into identity, agency, and purpose in the lives of our students, however that looks. So they wanted to broaden the prompt, and we did. So that was in the fall. This winter, we've refocused our mentors and students from the second cohort. The stories are rich and amazing. They're not ready yet for prime time, so I didn't bring one. But if we are meeting again next year, I'd love to. The stories, and the original cohort who are now mentors, they've also done new stories too that are rich and powerful and amazing. We also asked the students to help us create resources to introduce digital storytelling to the broader campus. So how could faculty potentially use a digital story to replace a more traditional assignment? And we're looking now at recording space on campus so that we could really broaden out, from the library standpoint, the opportunity for digital storytelling. And we also submitted a proposal to the 11th Annual International Digital Storytelling Conference in Maryland, and it was accepted. That was wonderful. We presented in June, and we'll be able to take some of those students again, thanks to our CLTE grant and then a matching grant from our chancellor. So this will be, for some of our students, the first time that they're going to be outside of the Midwest, so we're really excited about that. And the theme is radical listening, stories for a just future. So we feel that the stories that we're going to be able to share there will be really powerful. So thank you. Please feel free to reach out for more information about the project at Dearborn Storytelling Project, and I'm happy to share these slides, and thanks for the opportunity to share this.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. My question is about social media. And I'm wondering what the students' reactions were or separation was in doing this project versus what they're used to doing sort of every day, which is showing their identities through social media in ways that aren't always authentic.
Great question. And I guess not surprisingly, the students have said that these stories are like you know, it's like a novel compared to a TikTok, right? So that was one thing, that this is sustained. And for any of you who have done any kind of media production, 5 minutes is, you know, a lot more time to develop and script and this is their first go around. But they did talk about the, you know, the positivity that's always presented on social media, right? That we're having fun, we're doing well, things are great, we look great, right? And the effort here was to try to get more and more authentic. And that's what they kept pushing each other on with and giving each other courage. I mean, each of the stories has something that's kind of remarkable in terms of who the person is and how they got the courage to share some of the things that they're sharing. And I think that is really different from performing for an audience on social media. And again, like I said, we had senior officers and deeds there, and the students were saying, this is like negative marketing. Are we going to be okay? Happily, people responded to the authenticity of the stories more than the happy, you know, the happy face of it. So I think they saw that as a really different kind of experience, but they did talk about the challenges of having to perform for social media.
Hello. I was wondering, are you utilizing emerging and creative technology right now in this program, and what do you see coming in the future?
So do you mean like beyond WeVideo that we're using?
I'm thinking about other emerging technologies. We talk a lot about how we are using tech in narrative and digital storytelling, but there's also the components of creative practice, embodied practice, performance. So how do you balance both when you're designing a program, and do you see anything that's coming up that's going to change out kind of the media production components or slightly go a different direction that's not video? I'm intrigued of what's coming next.
No, thank you for clarifying that. We've been emphasizing from the beginning, and I should say Christopher Spilker, who's the lead faculty librarian on this, that this is about writing stories. So we're writing stories and we're layering it with images and with sound. And so the technology part, like they wanted to play with WeVideo right away. They wanted to do some cool effects, and we had to step back and say, this is actually about writing your story first and telling your story and sharing it with each other. But we've wanted to do, I think we'd like to move into open mics and some things like Moth Story Hour kind of model. And Professor Adler was talking about performing the stories, and that was not something I'd thought of before. So thank you for that idea. I think imagining the students performing each other's stories or having different students performing the stories could be really interesting. So I think that's where we are at this point, is what besides just putting digital stories on the website can we do to share those stories and to scale it up. Thank you.